Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, today we're going to be talking about the one and only Turbo Coin, ladies and gentlemen, right? We can see first off that tomorrow is Turbo's birthday. So shout out to Turbo, you know what I'm saying? One day away from its birthday. Now, unfortunately, I will not be attending this as I do have a lot of important things. Guys, the end of April, so many people's birthdays. Got a lot of work on my end. You know what I'm saying? Business, this and that. But the next event, I promise I will be there for, speaking on Twitter. So really, really excited about the next event because I will personally be there. But look, there are no new updates in terms of Turbo itself, but we can see CoinGecko said pretty much, look, top gainers and losers on the CoinGecko chart last week, right? We can see leading the gainers pack is Turbo, while AERGO, Agro, whatever, I don't know what the hell, I never heard of this coin, took the biggest hit. So, first of all, that's pretty bad. That is pretty bad. Taking a 37% dip is terrible, right? If you saw your coin take big dips last week when Bitcoin went up and you've seen, most of the coins have gone up, probably at least 20 or 30% at the minimum, then that's a bad sign if your coin, especially when like minus 15%, 20%, 30%, even minus 5%, could be a little bit of a bad sign depending on the context. So, but fortunately for us, we don't talk about these coins. We talk about the number one gaining coin in the whole entire market, ladies and gentlemen. And that is no other than the legendary Turbo coin. We can see 158% over the week. Absolutely fantastic. That is what we love to see. And I cannot wait to see where Turbo will end up this cycle, right? Because that is the ultimate question. Where will Turbo end up this cycle? First of all, if we're talking about exchanges and listings and everything, Robinhood, right? Robinhood for me is 100%. If I was a betting man, which I mean trading, some people debate that's gambling, that's betting, that's just calculated gambling, whatever you want to say. But if I was a betting man, I would bet my money that Turbo will be listed on Robinhood because simply it is just too good not to get listed. And that is the reality, right? We ain't no little, other coin, pushing to be the 30th best meme coin or 25th or 40th, and I'm just saying this. No, 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 no. Turbo has shown a lot of a lot of gains in 2024, a lot of potential. Its fundamentals, its narratives, its reaching out to this community, that community, the collaboration, the exchange listings. It just shows too much for something like Robinhood not to have its eyes on Turbo. And like I said, I believe we will be there getting listed on, Robinhood sooner than later. All right. Sorry, I'm a little like cracked out right now. I mean, not literally, right? I literally don't drink or smoke or anything, but I'm just feeling super energetic. Spring is here. Oh my gosh, the weather is fantastic. Life is fantastic. Turbo is fantastic. How can you not be super, super excited? But look, right? The ultimate question is where will Turbo end up? On the week, right? If we're seeing super short term, potentially some types of sell-offs, right? Now, the reality is if Turbo holds really strong, if Bitcoin holds really strong, then we will most likely not go below this range of 0.004. Okay, that is just the reality. However, if we see Bitcoin retrace, maybe back down to 89K, 90K for a retest, right? Then there is a decent chance that Turbo might, go down a good amount. Remember, meme coins are a double-edged sword. So if the market, let's say the general altcoin might be going down 12%, a meme coin might go down 18%. But then when it comes to pumps, right, it's the same thing. An altcoin can pump 12%, but a meme coin can pump 20%, 25%. It's just the name of the game. So look, right, we have generally these two big zones down here for a big fundamental retest. And, over here, right, we talked about the 0.004 area. And we can see, right, it all just depends on the market conditions generally. Overall, I believe we are going to be in recovery mode for April, May, and June. April already, right, played out exactly how we talked about that. I believe Bitcoin was going to sweep the bottoms, it was going to go a little bit lower, and then it was going to start retracing back up. And that is exactly what happened. Turbo was even just a little lower beginning of April, and then instantly huge momentum shift, and we are back up. Now, you got to remember, these types of pumps will most likely not be consistently happening until altcoin season. So I do expect things to slow down, which is okay, right? You got to remember that this is a marathon at the end of the day. Most of you guys have been here for, a couple weeks, couple months, maybe even over a year at this point. And you got to realize you are much closer to the finish line than further away. We just have, at most, in my opinion, a few short months, right? I'm talking about less than half a year, in my opinion, for altcoin season to happen. Okay. So, you can really last, even if it was another half a year, right? But most likely that 3 to 4.5 month range is where we're gonna peak the first time, in my personal opinion, right? So here are some buy zones if we do go back down. Now, obviously, we are pretty bullish right now. However, if this daily candle, kind of closes the way it closes, I could see some type of rejections going back down, which is fine. Do not panic. Do not panic, right? We got to see rejections all the way down here. And depending how, big of a correction we get now, right, we could even go back to 0.0032. Now, if you missed buying turbo, then you want a bigger pullback, right? You want the ultimate fundamental correction. But it doesn't have to happen, because the reality is we might visit these zones back in the bear season, okay? Right? We might fix certain imbalances in the market when, in the bear season. So it doesn't have to happen now. But I do think there's some type of pullback. If I didn't have turbo, based on my knowledge, I would personally wait. Now, if you want to be that person that just, gets in to get in, you can get in now, because in the bigger picture, right, the bigger picture, you're still going to make money. But if you want a more, precise entry, an entry that gets you slightly better ratios, then I would personally wait until 0.0042 maybe, and depending how bearish we are this week, then maybe even down to 0.032. All right, but ultimately, guys, where will turbo end up? Well, I believe this coin will at least be hitting 10 billion market cap. Okay, now I know some people have it higher, some people have it lower. Most people do have it higher than that, but you got to realize, right now, generally speaking, a 30x from here, right? If we are at 0.005, that would ultimately mean we get to 5 cents, 10 cents, 15 cents, right? So 15 cents more or less for this coin. But you got to remember, right? There's also a good chance that when we do start hitting the couple cent zone mark, then people will start saying 50 cent turbo, 70 cent, $1 turbo. And that narrative might just cause it to pump up a couple more cents, which is a lot for us, right? That is a lot. So for me, big range. I don't know how altcoin season is necessarily going to play out in terms of how big it's going to be, right? I personally am always on the more conservative side. So, I even myself might get surprised, just the way I got surprised with Turbo, last week. I expected these types of moves, or this price, eventually in the next few short weeks, but I didn't expect it to happen in a singular week. Okay, I did not expect to happen in a singular week, and that is the reality. So these markets can move really really fast. They can even surprise me with how fast they can move. So look, maybe even a 60x from here, which would be 30 cent turbo. Now, $1 turbo, I hear people say it, that is, like, I would bet that would not happen, because that would be such high market cap. And you know me, right? I like it the more conservative side. I don't mind going a little bit moon boy, but there comes a point where I don't want people to, ultimately be in a delusional mindset when they have so much, let's say in a couple months, they have so many gains, right? Let's say Turbo does hit this 30 cent mark. People are celebrating and they're like, you know what? I made so much money. Let's say they turned like 5,000 into like 150,000 or whatever, like 100,000, right? And they're like, oh my gosh, this is insane. And then they think they're still going to get in a 3x from there. And then they do not take the money that's in front of them. That would be very, very dreadful, right? That would be very, very painful. So, that is why I kind of shut down these narratives. I don't want you guys losing your money. But yeah, that is ultimately it for Turbo, ladies and gentlemen. I do expect a little bit of a pullback this week. If not this week, then most likely next week. We will continue to monitor monitor Turbo every single day. And of course, I'll keep you guys updated. But that is it. I hope you guys enjoy, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.